Hey everybody, what's up? It is Thursday, April 17th. So Dow was down, Nasdaq down a little bit, S&P up slightly. I want to talk about, you probably saw today in the news that Trump, he came out with some pretty critical statements against Jerome Powell. And actually, I very much agree with Trump. Yesterday, we saw that big market sell off. Powell made some comments which I think were completely inappropriate. You know, he's continuing to position with this very hawkish view, and he's projecting out conditions which he does not know yet. I mean, the Fed and Powell in particular is transmitting or communicating a lot of unnecessary and needless volatility and concern to the markets when he doesn't know, the outcome of a lot of these tariffs are still in negotiation and stuff like that. The Fed's job is not to transmit or to communicate. I think anyway, that its job should not be to transmit or communicate any unnecessary concern or volatility to the markets when they don't know the outcome. The Fed should react to conditions. They always say that. I mean, they say that in their statements that, we're going to do such and such depending on what conditions dictate. And I think they need to stick to that. And for Powell now, he's been very consistently coming out with this hawkish view. And it's funny because, Trump calls him now, he's got a nickname for him. He calls him Too Late Powell. He said he was wrong about everything. He was wrong about the inflation impulse going back in 2021 and early 2022 when he said it was transitory. The other thing I want to just mention is the fact that the ECB cut rates again. This is, this really gets me because the evidence is all over the place. It's all around the impact of monetary policy and rate setting, okay? You have the ECB, you have the Bank of Canada, you have the Australian National Bank, you have the Bank of England. They've been cutting rates and inflation has been going down. Okay? We just had a thing the other day of in Canada. Surprisingly, the inflation was lower because they've been cutting rates. Then you have the Bank of Japan, where in Japan, there was virtually no inflation, even during the COVID pandemic. And the Bank of Japan had rates at negative. They had it at negative 10 basis points, okay? Which all these monitors believe, that's like hyper stimulative. They had zero inflation. Then for some unknown reason, the Bank of Japan decides they want to raise interest rates. And guess what? Now interest rates are going up. So, the evidence is all over the place. And of course, I've cited in the past, Argentina and Turkey and all these places where you've seen this monetarist wrong application, in my opinion, of monetary policy, where they raise interest rates and what happens? The inflation goes higher, the currency goes down. And here's the Fed. Here's Powell talking about stubborn inflation. This has been his thing now for a long time. Yet, he's keeping real interest rates. We just had the PPI, the producer price index was like negative 0.4. And he's got like a freaking, 4.5% Fed funds rate. So we have like real interest rates, almost 9%. Okay, freaking 8.5%. And he's like scratching his head as to why inflation is stubborn. Because you idiot, rates That's the general price level of anything, because I will repeat it for the 1 billionth time that the cost of credit is reflected in the cost of all goods and services. So Powell's got some kind of vendetta. Look, Trump wants him out, okay? Trump said today that his term can come to an end soon enough. And I agree with Trump, okay? Not that interest rates are the be all and end all. You know, Trump looks at it like a real estate developer. I don't think that's, the right way to consider it either. But the thing that gets me, and this is true really throughout central banking and basically throughout our whole financial establishment, this wrong understanding of monetarism. Like monetarism, like I've said so many times, is like a mental illness. It's a disease which has taken over all policy, all right? And it's ass backwards. They don't understand it. They engage in policy that ends up doing the opposite of what they're trying to do. And Powell has some kind of vendetta against Trump. I mean, if I'm in a relationship, first of all, he was appointed by Trump, all right? Trump is the president of the United States. He's the commander-in-chief. These people serve at the pleasure of the president. Now, I understand in agencies, I guess it's a matter of law, because Powell keeps citing, like, you're not allowed to fire me because that's the law, that's the statute. I'm sorry, like, if I'm in a relationship and somebody doesn't want to be with me anymore, I think the honorable thing to do is you leave, you part ways. I think that's the honorable thing to do. I don't think you stay there, when somebody, even if that is the law, okay? I don't think you stay there when somebody who happens to be the president of the United States has said repeatedly, I don't want this guy there anymore. I'm not happy with the job he's doing. All right. And Trump is right. Whether or not he understands the dynamics of monetary policy, he's right in the sense that the Fed keeping rates elevated. Like I said, real interest rates are close to 9%. It's fucking ridiculous. And that's just keeping the general price level high. So, like, Trump has communicated to Powell, like, I don't want you there. But this guy just continues to dig in his heels, in this kind of stubborn, you're not making me go anywhere because that's the law. I mean, it's childish. I think it's feminine, okay? I think it's dishonorable, all right? I mean, the guy should resign. I don't know, and he's digging in, and now I'm starting to think that this feud is getting so heated. Before, I thought like the Fed is going to be compelled as a result of economic conditions to cut interest rates. I'm not sure that's going to happen anymore. As a matter of fact, I'm starting to think like they might raise interest rates. They might again resume the raising of interest rates. I mean, if they see the slightest indication in the tariffs that prices are going up, they're going to raise interest rates. And that's it for the bonds. Okay? I mean, that's it for the stock market. That, even though rate hikes, as I've said in the past, are, interest income transfers into the economy, we know that the initial reaction on the part of investors is negative, all right? You got to go through that cycle first before you get that inflection point where the increase in interest income transfers starts to support higher levels of economic activity. So, like, Powell is just, I don't know what he's trying to do. I don't know what he's trying to do. And, I'm not a conspiracy theory kind of guy. But I keep thinking like he's running cover for some of these hedge funds that are short treasuries. I think he's playing a game here where he's already looking ahead to his own career path and his own future. When he gets out, he wants some job either at a think tank or most likely at a hedge fund where, he's going to get paid handsomely. I'm starting to think that. I mean, like I said, I'm not a conspiracy guy, but I don't see any other reason. I mean, the evidence is right out there in front of your freaking face. I mean, the ECB cut rates today was the 7th time. Inflation is going down. And all the other central banks that I mentioned, inflation is going down with the rate cuts. And vice versa in Japan, where the Bank of Japan, for no reason whatsoever, just decided, hey, we're going to start raising interest rates. And guess what? Inflation is going up in Japan. I mean, what more do you need to see? Now, I understand like this mentality is so embedded into, the institutional thought, the way the institutional applications, that they can't find it in themselves to even call it out. And even when it works in their favor, like when they're cutting interest rates and the inflation goes down, they don't acknowledge it. And when they raise interest rates and inflation stays high, they don't acknowledge it. They just keep doing the same thing. Here's another thing. I was never one of these guys, who was like this, end the Fed, like fucking Rand Paul and all these other people, end the Fed. But I'm starting to think like maybe that's what we ought to do. I think the worst thing they did, it wasn't so much the establishment of the Fed in 1913, because I think that was necessary to have a lender of last resort. When we had the panic of 1907, you had guys like J.P. Morgan and Rockefeller. They got together in concert, almost, kind of like a quasi central bank, to put up the money to be lenders of last resort to stabilize the financial system in that panic in 1907. All right. So eventually the Congress created the Fed to act in that regard, to be a lender of last resort and also to be a regulator. That's another thing they're doing bad. A regulator of the financial system. Look, we have this situation that I've been explaining with the supplemental leverage ratio, where government spending at 7 trillion plus annually just results in massive amounts of reserves piling up in the financial system, which have to be capitalized according to the regulations, and they don't do anything about it. I mean, it's set up in a way that nobody considered. I guess when the supplemental leverage ratio was decided upon, at that time nobody thought, well, the government's going to be spending 7 trillion plus annually and running 1.5, 1.6, 1.82 trillion dollar deficits. That's massive amounts of reserves being added into the financial system, into the banking system. I guess nobody thought, we're going to be hitting these kind of numbers, but we are hitting these kind of numbers. And what are they doing about it? The Fed is the regulator of the Fed, and they're all sitting around saying, hey, look what's going on. Let's create a separate vehicle so that banks could move deposits into that vehicle, because they're going to be in non-compliance. They're going to be insolvent. I mean, fucking change the fucking rule, you idiots. And like Bessent, Treasury Secretary, he say, people have asked it. It's not like he doesn't know about it. Congress knows about it. They all know about it. And they're all sitting there, let's think it over. Let's think it over. I mean, Jesus, guys, like it's happening every freaking day. And Bessent is like, We got to rigorously study the regulations. What the fuck do you need to study? I mean, the Fed literally had to create a separate vehicle so banks don't go freaking insolvent. I mean, this is crazy, so that they don't regulate. All right? Then, I mean, so what I was saying was the actual creation of the Fed, in my opinion, it wasn't a bad thing. It wasn't the wrong thing to do. What I think was the wrong thing was the Humphrey-Hawkins Act in 1978. That was stupid, because basically what that did is it handed over the management of the economy to the Fed. Like, Congress basically said, okay, you do it. We're not going to do it. You do it. And the Fed doesn't have the tools to do that. Okay, the Fed is a bank. All right? A bank cannot regulate the economy. A bank can extend credit. Okay? The Fed can't even, people think it prints money. It doesn't print money. It could lend against assets, which is simply a recomposition of the assets in the economy, the financial assets in the economy. And in the case where the Fed does pay interest on reserves, you might say, well, Mike, that's printing money. Well, no, it isn't, because reserves have to first be in the system, and that comes as a consequence of government spending. The government has to put those reserves in the system from spending. Then the Fed can pay interest on reserves. But I mean, that's like the second derivative. That's secondary after if there's no reserves in the system, the Fed can't pay any interest on reserves, all right? So, I mean, the Fed doesn't have the tools to regulate the economy. It's the fiscal that regulates the economy, okay? At least in the way we're structured in our country right now. We're not like a net exporter. Although I think that's what Trump's trying to do, but good luck with that. That's going to take years and years if that ever happens. And I don't even know why you would want that to happen. But that's a whole separate discussion, which I've gone through many, many times. So like the Fed is a bank. It doesn't have the tools to regulate the economy. I mean, it sets interest rates, which is price setting. And that's a very ineffective way to regulate the economy, all right? It cannot create any abundance, all right? I mean, if you're short on oil, if you have no energy or oil or food, it doesn't matter what the Fed does. It can't create energy or food or shelter. It can't create that. It just doesn't do that. So like that 1978 Humphrey-Hawkins thing, when Congress basically said, here, you take it. Leave us out of it. That was fucked up, and that should not have happened. And this is why I think now, I think I'm becoming one of these end the Fed guys. I really am. Because you get a guy like Powell, and I don't understand his behavior. If I'm in a relationship with somebody and that person says, I don't want you anymore, like, I'm gone, man. I just think that's the honorable thing to do. What do you hang on and you cling because that's the law? But okay, that's the law. But like, he's the president. He appointed you. He's not happy with, the conduct of your job. And I have to agree with Trump, at least at some level. Maybe Trump doesn't understand it in the same way that I do. But the guy should not be making speeches and projecting economic conditions which he does not know at this time. There's no reason, and maybe he'll end up being right, okay? Maybe he'll end up being right, but there's no reason right now to come out every time and say, we're worried about this such and such development. It hasn't happened yet. There's no need for that. We're already in a very stressful situation with the tariffs and this and that. There's no need for him to come out. I mean, he could say what the Fed usually says, which is we will react to conditions as they develop. He doesn't have to say we're worried because it's going to be all these tariffs. Oh my God, it's going to be terrible. So that's bad. You don't want a guy doing that. There's no reason for somebody to be doing that. Okay? That's hysterical. That's emotional. That's transmitting the wrong message needlessly, unnecessarily. So he's got to go. But unfortunately, he's not going to go. And I think, again, he's doing this to protect bond shorts. And I think now I'm starting to think like we won't see any rate cuts and we might even see rate hikes. I mean, I'm not ready to call that yet, but I just don't like what I see. I mean, this guy, he's bad. He's just bad. From the simple point of view of just what he is communicating unnecessarily, that should not be happening, period. Anyway, that's it for today, folks. Please like and subscribe if you've done that already. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And don't forget, go to my website, pitbulleconomics.com, and get yourself a 30-day free trial to my report, MMT Trader. Remember, I'm the only one who has an applied approach to MMT. Nobody else does that, not the academics, not people you think. I've had people here, oh, I'm going to go learn it somewhere. All right, good luck with that, all right? 40-something, 46 years as a trader, 4 exchanges, economist. Nobody puts it all together the way I do. Anyway, have a good one. See you tomorrow. Bye.